Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Mysteries and Oddities video. Alright, another entry here based on one of your suggestions, one of the past suggestions from the first go around. I'll probably do one last one here and then give this series a rest and start focusing on other items. This suggestion is pretty fascinating because it has to do with one of my most favorite subjects ever, and that's involving cursed objects. Those of you that are fans of my YouTube channel for a while know how much I love talking about cursed items. It's just the idea that an inanimate object is just sitting there in a room. It looks like it's doing nothing, but at the same time it's doing everything it can to harm you. So very fascinating stuff. These have to do with a couple of small shrunken heads of sorts that were found, created a lot of ruckus towards various people, and then remain a mystery as to who they were created by, what they were for, and even the whereabouts of them today. And it has to do with this. You're looking at a picture of them now, very distinct looking. They're known as the Hexham Heads, and they were found somewhere in the English town of Hexham back in 1971. So lots of good info to share. Let's go ahead and we'll start that information right here. So what were these Hexham Heads? Well, they were a pair of small stone heads, tiny ones, probably only a couple of inches tall at most, 6 centimeters high to be exact, and they were found again within that town of Hexham. It was back in 1971 specifically, and they were just roundabout found by two boys who happened to be looking somewhere in a garden. When you think about the odds of that, imagine that. These were buried there who knows how far back, although there is a theory from one guy that states a specific date, and I'll get to that here in a minute. But in either case, these were buried who knows how far back, just in one random spot, left there for years and years and years, and then just by pure happen chance, these two boys, one by the name of Colin, the other one Leslie, happened to be there right at that moment, saw it, or maybe just were randomly digging around as boys do when it comes to the ground, and then they came across these heads. And when they did so, of course, they naturally stood out. I mean, you're looking at them here. They look like they're just human type heads, but the shrunken kind, like the kind you see in like the Ripley's Believe It or Not. I saw some of those there too when I was there in San Antonio recently, and I visited the museum. And they're made of some kind of stone, although it's been debated what the material is as well. And I'll mention more of that too here in a minute. But they took these and they just basically took them back to their home. I mean, it's boys will be boys. They found it to be really interesting. Nothing really in terms of any whereabouts or known items as to what danger these heads would prove later on. But still, they just took it back home as a neat little find. But what started happening afterward, that's what gave this curse to the Hexham Heads. Shortly afterward, this Robson family started to report these strange phenomena occurring within their home. You could almost say it was paranormal, if you will. These things involved the heads either themselves being moved when no one was there. So the heads would be left in one part of a room, then someone would come back and they would find them gone, maybe in another part of the room itself. Who knows? But clearly nobody touched these heads, and yet they were specifically moved. And then stuff was being mysteriously thrown across several of the rooms, so much so that it even involved bottles when that was happening. And it wasn't just the family itself, the Robson family, experiencing this. There was a family next door named the Dodd family who also experienced it. So it seems like this thing, whatever this curse was, seemed to have had a radius that encompassed not just that home, but the home next door too. And it culminated in some of the more severe stuff. Like, for example, one of the boys specifically had his hair pulled pretty strongly by something. So that's not a good thing, of course, whenever you have something like that happen. And then finally, the biggest one was there was the mother of the family who started to report seeing an apparition, something involving a half man, half sheep that was there within the hallway, like within the house itself. How creepy is that? Imagine waking up and then going to the kitchen, doing whatever, Then you see something like this, half man, half sheep, wandering around the home, just looking at you, and then in some cases disappearing too. So finally, some experts decided to come in and take a look, see what they could do with regards to finding out the mystery of this thing. One of the most, I guess, controversial ones was this lady, Dr. Ann Ross, who you're looking at a picture of now. She was a noted expert in Celtic artifacts, and the reason she was brought in is because the way I was reading this information, she was at a conference, and somehow the information of these stones got to her. And when that happened, she, being an expert in, I guess, stuff involving the Celtics, she realized or thought to herself, maybe there's a link related to that as well. So she decided to investigate the heads themselves, and she brought them over back to her place. Interestingly enough, this curse, whatever it was that was happening with the Robsons, in turn went over to her too, because she stated that some morning she would wake up and she too would see something, apparition, something involving a part animal, part man. I'm saying apparition, but it's probably more on the lines of something real, like in terms of, let's say, a faded ghost that you could clearly see as a ghost. That made it seem like the stuff that I was reading, that they were seeing real things, like something right there physically in the kitchen. But yes, in this case, she saw this part animal, part man walking right out of her room. She actually had the gall to follow it downstairs, and when she did so, that's when it turned towards the kitchen, obviously showing intelligence, knowing that it was being tracked. And that's when she went to the kitchen. That's when it was completely gone. When she turned the corner thereafter. It wasn't just her that was experiencing this too, because much like the Robsons and multiple family members, in her case, Dr. Ross's daughter also saw something, but in this case, it was more along the lines of a large, dark werewolf, something that was within the stairs of the home, somewhere near the banisters. It made some leap of something, and then that's when it ran into a corridor and vanished. So that would be very frightful, because that would look not just dangerous, but at the same time it would just scare the bejesus out of somebody. Imagine seeing something along those lines. Other paranormal activity that's been cited with this these sets of cursed heads happen to be the feeling of a cold presence, the feeling as if somebody is there staring back at you when you clearly know nobody is there. There was doors being burst open as well. So all these things, Dr. Ann Ross stated, were from these heads because of their curse. She stated, and this is all still controversial, because she herself apparently is a controversial figure. She stated that a lot of this stuff was because these items were involved in some kind of Celtic holy land of something. So wherever they were found, they must have been buried there. That was considered some kind of sacred land, and then because they were taken from that location, that's when that's like it was a shrine, if you could believe it, like the way she described it was a Celtic shrine. Because they were taken away from that shrine, then that's when these cursed heads started to retaliate thereafter. They were making sure that they did not like being found either there, and then also did not like being taken away and then being, I guess, misplaced from the shrine that they're at. Which is interesting to note, because you hear that from other cursed legends out there, where if you find something and you're told not to touch it, and you still do so, then that's when you experience some very bad stuff. There's one story that stood out. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it has to do with a location where you're not supposed to take any stones. Like if you do, then you'll receive a curse. And then people take these stones regardless because they think nothing's going to happen. Then they experience a lot of bad things, and then they actually mail those small stones back to that location. Multiple letters there by the guide stating that they receive these on a yearly basis, stating, please forgive me, whoever is part of these curse, because I have doing something bad, and so I'm returning these and making sure that they have that bad juju no longer with them. But not only did Dr. Ann Ross take a look at them, but there was another professor that was done. This was Dr. Douglas Robinson. He in turn took a look at these stones and then tried to see what the material was. Remember I was mentioning earlier that there's controversy also on what these heads are made out of. Her suggestion was that it was something involving coarse sandstone, something like quartz grains. When he was looking at the material, he stated that it was something more along the lines of artificial cement. Like it's not any kind of natural sandstone, that it seems to actually be man-made. So that's interesting to know too, because here you have almost two distinguished people, both educated, both knowing a lot of things in their fields, and then both of them coming to two completely different conclusions. That last part, though, by this Dr. Douglas Robson is interesting to note, with it being man-made, because I was mentioning earlier that there could be a known year on when these created, that these weren't there and buried in the ground hundreds of years, but instead it's buried somewhere in 1956 or somewhere on the lines by a guy named Desmond Craigie. Because after the legend of these Hexham Heads and their curse started to permeate throughout multiple newspapers, he stepped forward and he stated, now none of this has been truly verified, but he stated that he was the actual creator of these heads. He said he made them sometime in 1956 for his daughter while he was living in a house, that same house that was later owned by the Robson family, the family that had those two kids that found that head later on in 1971. So he stated he created these heads just as a gift for his daughter. Creepy looking heads. Why would some dad create these heads that would create nightmares for their daughter? But still, he created them. There were supposed to be 3 of them, but the third one became so damaged that he had to throw it away, so now there's only 2. And that he stated that he just simply made them from scratch, like he himself made them. They were handmade, made from concrete. Then that and when people doubted him, he in turn made some new ones to showcase to whoever he was telling that he was the creator, that yes, I mean, this is them. I just created some new ones to showcase that. And so it was concluded that most likely he was the creator, but at the same time it's not 100% known, because he could simply be somebody that was just falling back on this curse and then trying to create publicity for himself. But who knows with regards to the existence. Are they really, really old relics, something from a Celtic shrine buried hundreds, maybe thousands of years ago and then found and involving a curse? Or are they simply created by someone as a gift for their daughter and they've been misconstrued towards being cursed objects thereafter? Who knows? It's up to you to decide. Interestingly enough, the whereabouts of the original heads, somewhere along the way, after the stuff died down regarding these legends, regarding the curse of these heads, I guess interest slowly faded away, then these heads have been gone. Like, nobody knows where the whereabouts of them at this moment. They could be at someone's house, and that person in turn just doesn't want any publicity, and so they could be just resting on a shelf. Or somebody could have decided, we're going to deal with this once and for all, and taken the heads and thrown them in the sea, or who knows. But as far as their current whereabouts, they are completely lost. No one knows where they are right now. But that's it. That's all the information tied to these Hexham Heads. I love cursed object items. I love the idea. By the way, there was one other guy that stated that when he was examining it, that these heads, it almost had like eyes watching him. There's the idea, like when you stare at a doll, that it's staring back at you. It's just inanimate. But then others state that when they stare at a doll, like Robert's doll, it's almost like it's staring truly back at you, like a real thing. Same case with this. Some guy was stating that as he was examining the heads, it felt like these eyes from the heads were looking at him directly, like actively, like living eyes, in other words. So pretty creepy stuff. But if anyone has any more info, anything else that you'd like to share with the fans here, please post those comments below. That'd be really great to hear. So alright, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.